Hey everybody, I'm Jacob Castro and welcome to another video here on Jacob's Aquarium. Hope you guys are doing good and hope your tanks are doing good as well. It is a beautiful, sunny, clear day here in Southern California. I don't mean to gloat or brag because I know the rest of the country is dealing with, snowstorms, hail, sleet, thunderstorms, and it's not the most enjoyable weather. Well, for those that don't enjoy that weather. But over here it's absolutely beautiful. And by the way, I hope you guys like my sunglasses. It's a little different. I never have worn sunglasses in any of my videos. The thing is, I have to because working in the greenhouse is kind of like working inside of a sauna with a glass roof that's sitting on the surface of the sun. So naturally I'm squinting all day without these glasses, and I come home red as a apple. Yeah, I think that's a good comparison. And I pretty much have turned into a dried up raisin working in this greenhouse because it is so hot and sunny in here. So I'm hoping these sunglasses help a little bit. And as you can see, from what I just described, it's the most pleasant, most enjoyable work environment. Anyway, so a lot of people ask me, what do you use to filter your pond? And I've talked a little bit about this before in my other videos, but I never really went in depth and discussed, the whole aspects of, the filtration system, or all the aspects of the filtration system. People have asked me, to use power filters, canister filters, and I always think, and I'm like, yeah, no, that would not work. The pond is such a large system. You need and also considering I have fish, you need a filter, or I needed a filter that can sustain a lot of biological, good biological bacteria. So in other words, a filter that I can put a lot of biological media in, and something that also skim the surface of the water, because a lot of protein buildup was happening with the pond. So a canister filter, power filter, or any other type of filter that I don't even know about. I'm sure there's some crazy fancy something new that I haven't even heard of, because it seems like they come out with new stuff all the time. Would not work. So I chose to use a Sump Filter, and surprisingly it is super easy to maintain. It does a great job with mechanical filtration, biological filtration. I don't use chemical filtration because there really isn't a point to it in my case. Some people swear by using activated carbon in their filtration systems. I don't, and I really wouldn't use it, period, in any of my tanks. I could use it with the pond, but I choose not to because I just don't see a point. But you can. It's just my personal preference. But mechanical filtration is awesome. Plenty of biological filtration. It's just a really nice filter, and it keeps the pond really healthy. The fish are happy as a result of the proper filtration as well. So let's dive in a little deeper. Yeah, that sounds a little funny because we're talking about a huge body, a system of water. Let's dive in a little deeper. Not really, because I don't think I would be able to enjoy swimming in this pond. I'd probably ruin everything, and there goes thousands of dollars worth of product. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about my filtration system that I use on my 600-gallon Planet Tank system. Alright guys, so we'll start over here. This is the overflow, and the overflow is made by eShops. It is I think it's rated at 900 gallons per hour, which is great. I have a 1,000 gallon per hour pump pumping water back into the pond, so it's working out perfectly. I could put a stronger pump on here, to round it out to 1,000 gallons per hour, since the overflow is 900 gallons per hour and the pump is 1,000, you think there'd be some conflict with that. There'd be too much water coming into the pond for the overflow to handle. The thing is that with all the length of pipe and things that the pump has to pump water through, like the UV sterilizer over there, and then it has to pump water all the way to the end of the pond, it kind of loses a lot of its GPH rating, so it kind of goes down a little bit. So it's pretty much matched up perfectly, so that this 900 gallon per hour overflow can handle the amount of water that's coming into the pond. So it works out great, and this is what I love the most about my sump filter is this overflows, because it's constantly skimming the surface of the water. Before, when I used other types of filtration systems, like actually, I'm sure you guys remember the that blue water barrel filter that I built. I actually used that barrel as a filter. When I was using that, there was no skimmer involved with that filtration system, so I could not skim the surface of the water. And when I was doing that, there was constant protein buildup on the surface of the water, which was not really good, because the amount of oxygen being introduced into the pond was minimal, because the surface of the water was just so stagnant, So with this overflow, it's constantly skimming the surface of the water, which is great because it keeps the surface of the water nice and clear, which is good, so that when customers come in, they can see the plants clearly, they're clearly visible. And it's also beneficial for the pond, like I said, in regards to the oxygen, the amount of oxygen and, filtration of the water. It's just much better to have something skimming the surface of your water. The only problem I run into every single day, which is this is like a routine for me, is when I come in the morning to the nursery, the first thing I do is I clear all the debris from the front or from the overflow box right here, because overnight parts of plants, plant material, dead leaves, they all float to the surface, and since this thing is skimming the surface of the water, they all get pushed up against here and they don't go away. So, which is actually kind of scary, because if you think about it, if all this clogs, where's the water going to go? Well, it can overflow onto here. That wouldn't be good, because I'll suck up some fish. Or it could just spill out of the pond, which is really bad. Thankfully, though, it hasn't gotten to the point where there's so much plant material being sucked into the overflow that it's clogged. Normally what happens is one of these overflow tubes will stop working, but the second one will remain working, and it won't stop, because since one is not going, and the only one YouTube is doing the work of getting water into the filter, there's so much water flow going through this one that any air that builds up is just pushed right out. So I've been lucky, or well, not lucky, but I think it just works out to where, since there's two YouTubes, I don't have to worry about the overflow stopping, because if one stops, one just gets stronger and it doesn't stop at all. And like I said, there hasn't been enough plant material to fully clog up this overflow. So, but that's actually one of the negative things about using a overflow system, period, in any planted tank aquarium, or pretty much any, well, no, pretty much mostly just planted tanks, because all the plant material that could float up. So that's one of the negative things, is that if you have a planted tank, especially if it's a newly planted system where plants are still transitioning, into your tank, they're losing leaves and things like that. It's such a pain in the ass to have to constantly be clearing the overflow grill right there. Yeah, clean my grill. It's constantly a pain in the butt to have to do that. But then again, that isn't something that I would disqualify this filter for. I would still use it regardless of that, which that's why I'm still using it. So, but that's just one thing to keep in mind, guys. And so if I ever go on vacation, or if you guys ever go on vacation and you're using a sump filter, make sure that somebody can at least check it once a day, because if it clogs up, it could pretty much be a disaster if it clogs up enough to stop the overflow. Like I said, thankfully mine hasn't, but it can happen. And here in the greenhouse, if water spills out of the pond, it's not really a big deal, but in a home, it's a big deal. So keep that in mind, definitely, if you are thinking about using an overflow system or an overflow with your sump. So this works out really great. I love it. It's just such a fantastic part of this filtration system, that it skims the surface of the water. So it keeps the pond so nice and crystal clear, and you can see the plants very, very clearly. So let's go around the back side of the overflow, and I'll show you guys more of where the water enters and then where it goes from there. So as you can see, there's two inlets into the Sump Filter, which, by the way, I'm using my old 80-gallon aquarium, pretty much the aquarium that started it all with jacobsaquarium.com, my business. This thing has a lot of history, and every time I see it, I think about all the work that I've done with it, all the plants I've held in it over the years. This tank has held thousands and thousands of plants for all my customers, and it's just a really big part of you know, the history of Jacob's Aquarium. So I'm glad that I still have it, because it's a great memory of, you know, of what I started with and where I am now. so yeah, water comes in through right here, and I have these two pre-filters on the inlets, and I'll take one off just so I can show you guys. So water goes in right there, but it's always good to have some type of pre-filter on the intake for the sump filter, because, you know, as you can see, snails, plant material, you know, fish waste, you know, things that could really clog your mechanical filtration, which we'll talk more about in a little bit, you know, gets trapped in here, and you can just simply pull these off and rinse them off and get all that crap out, and then they're nice and clean. Which, by the way, that's another part of my daily routine. Is I clear the overflow of all the dead plant material, and then I come in here, I take these out, I spray out the inside. Of course, I leave this connected to the pond. I don't remove this, but I get a hose and I spray out the inside. I take these two pre-filters off and I clean them off really good, so that they're all nice and shiny and clean. And you know, that's what I do daily, because if not, a lot of crap would build up and it wouldn't look too great. And not to mention, since it's dying plant material, it would introduce a lot of excess nutrients into the pond, which definitely can contribute to nuisance algae, and I don't want that. So another part of my daily routine is cleaning these pre-filters right here, and that really helps keep the excess nutrients low. But it also, you know, keeps out all the larger material that can clog my mechanical filtration, which is really important, because as far as mechanical filtration goes, I use 2 micron socks. What I use is, I actually will use a okay, well, I did that wrong. Wasn't supposed to put that one in there, but anyway, so I use a 5 micron sock that's supposed to be actually on the outside of my 100 micron sock. So what should actually be happening is the 100 micron sock should be inside of the 5 micron sock. That way the water's filtered through the less porous filter sock to filter out even finer, larger material. I know that may sound weird, but there is some material that's even, you know, this is big material that needs to be filtered out, but there's even second to that biggest material that gets filtered out through the less porous 100 micron sock. And then that water then gets filtered out through a 5 micron sock, which is super fine, and gets out all the really tiny fine particles. Some people may say this is overkill. You typically don't see people using 5 micron socks in a sump filtration system, just because, especially if you have a fish only system with all, and no pre-filters as well, with all the fish waste and everything, those socks would get clogged on a daily basis, if not hourly. So, but with my system, since I'm using pre-filters, I have a 100 micron sock that's the start of the filtration system, and then that goes into a 5 micron sock. It keeps the particles that are being filtered out by the 5 micron sock really fine, so they don't get clogged that often. But still, I have to spray these out and clean these socks at least once a week. If I don't, water starts to overflow because the socks get clogged completely. But they do a fantastic job keeping the water crystal clear and free of all the fine particles. I mean, the water in this pond is probably the clearest water you'll ever see in a pond of this type. I mean, people have koi ponds and things like that, but they don't use these micron socks, because in a koi pond it just doesn't make any sense. They get clogged so quickly. So you'll never see water this clear in a pond system like this. It just doesn't really exist because people don't do that. But there's a benefit to that, you know. As I mentioned with the proteins, on the surface being removed through the skimmer. The water clarity is very important because, again, it helps keep the water crystal clear so that the customers can see the plants very clearly. So that's something very, very important for the pond, so that, you know, customers can clearly identify and choose the plants that they want. You know, they can see the colors clearly. There's no distortion, in other words, because the water's not cloudy. So these micron socks do a great job of keeping the water nice and clear, but you know, they're kind of a pain because it's just something I have to clean once a week. And I mean, it would be nice if I didn't have to do that at all. Or maybe I'm sounding lazy here, but you know, that's just how it is. So yeah, water comes in through there, through the pre-filters, then through the 100 micron sock, and then through the 5 micron sock, and then the water goes in through to here. And down in the bottom of my 80-gallon tank, I have 3 300-watt Eheim heaters. These are the biggest heaters offered by Eheim, and yes, 300 watts each. They suck a lot of power, but then again, they keep the pond at a nice constant, well, semi-constant. The temperatures do fluctuate a little bit, but not much. They keep the pond at a nice 75 degrees. If it gets really, really hot, guys, then the pond does kind of get a little warmer. It'll get 78, maybe even 80 degrees, but that's really rare. That really hasn't happened too often. But it keeps the pond at a nice 75 degrees, and which is really important because, you know, even though there's perfect weather right now in California, the winters out here in Temescal Valley, they get pretty bad. It actually snowed out here a while back, so if you can just imagine, it can get really, really cold. So these heaters are essential for, you know, those situations, because if the pond is not kept, you know, above, I would say maybe 55 degrees, you know, or 60 degrees, I would like that at least. Fish will definitely start to get stressed out. They could die. And the plants also are impacted too. With colder temperatures, I noticed that plants tend to grow more slowly, you know, which is not good in my case, because I'm growing plants for resale, so I need them to grow as fast as I can in order to sell as many as I can. You know, that's what keeps this place going. I mean, I don't like to talk about money and everything, but you know what? If I can't grow plants fast enough, I can't pay my rent here, and Jacob's Aquarium will, you know, not exist. So I need my plants to grow as fast as I can, and these heaters definitely help keeping the pond at a nice constant temperature. You may see that I also have a pump inside of there as well, and the pump is very beneficial because it's moving the water around, which, you know, a lot of people actually I see don't do this, and you need to have some type of water movement going across your heaters, because you won't get, you know, a stable temperature if you don't. If you have a lot of flow in your aquarium and your heater is directly inside your aquarium, you may be able to keep a constant temperature that way. But if you just have your heater in one side of your tank or in a sump filter and there's no movement, you know, then you won't be getting the most out of your heaters, and you won't be able to maintain a constant temperature. There is water movement, you know, don't get me wrong, water coming in through here, you know, and going over the heaters here and everything, but it's not a lot of flow, and the water comes out pretty slowly, and you know, it's going into these micron socks, and it's pretty much like stopped right there, and then the water just slowly disperses into the sump. So I mean, there's really not too much water flow. So a pump in here is essential because it's constantly moving the water around, pushing water over the heater, so any water around the heaters that gets nice and warm is pushed out into the return pump and then into the pond. So that way the temperatures are a lot more stable. And so if you don't have your heater in an area of your tank or your sump that's getting a lot of flow, try it. Okay, try putting a pump next to it, or try putting it in an area of your tank that has a lot of flow, because I guarantee you'll get much better results out of your heater. You'll get more stable temperatures. Water flow over heaters is essential, guys. It really is. Okay, so after the water passes over the heaters, it goes over to these lava rocks here, and it's really cool. There's actually a lot of algae that has grown on these rocks, which is really nice because it's helping keeping the excess nutrients in the pond under control, because the water's passing over here, and of course the algae is consuming all those excess nutrients. And which it's fine if algae grows in here. I don't give a crap if it grows in here, as long as it's not growing in the pond, which there's barely any algae growing in the pond. The only algae that's growing in the pond is pretty much on the sand, and I don't really care about that. Like I said, as long as the algae is not in the plants, I'm happy. So there's a lot of really cool algae growing on the rocks in here, and the snails have a field day eating all this stuff, which is great because they trim it, you know, as they eat it, and then it regrows again, so it's like a constant cycle. So pretty much think of the snails as like cows grazing in a pasture. It's pretty much just like that. I'm actually going to be getting some shrimp in here as well, so that they can eat some of this algae and, you know, help out the snails. I'm not really too concerned with the algae going away. It's just a matter of, you know, having some algae being, you know, taken away so that it can continue to grow and, you know, consume excess nutrients as water goes by it in here in the sump filter. So I'll be getting some snails, or some shrimp, I should say. So yeah, so these are black lava rocks. They're very porous. They do a great job collecting beneficial bacteria and algae, since, you know, the sump is in pretty much full sun. So I believe I have over 50 pounds of the stuff in here. It may not look like it, but there's so much more rock, guys. It goes back pretty far. There's a lot of rock in here, and it's done a great job collecting beneficial bacteria and helping the pond cycle so that, you know, it's stable now, and, you know, the water parameters are under control. So it's great. I love this stuff. And it's really cheap, you know, compared to bio balls or any of the other fancy biological media out there. This stuff is so cheap. You can buy it at any home improvement store pretty much, in all different sizes actually, and it does what it needs to do. It collects beneficial bacteria, and it's porous, so it's just great. I love it. It's a cheap way to add biological media to your sump filter, or if you have a filter large enough, to pretty much any filter. So after the water passes over the biological media, it then goes into the return pump right here. Like I said, this is a 1,000 gallon per hour return pump. And down there, I have my CO2 going directly into the return pump. And that is a Greenleaf Aquarium's atomic diffuser that the CO2 is coming out of. And that produces really fine bubbles that then go directly into the return pump. And then the water is pumped out through here, and then into a 9-watt total pond UV sterilizer, which is great, keeps the water nice and clear of free-floating algae. And then the water is pumped all the way down here and out into the pond. And that's pretty much it. That's how it goes. And, you know, there's water flow from here, which is pushing water, you know, over there in the pond, so it kind of creates a water movement that goes like this, you know, kind of like a you know, slingshot pattern, because water goes right here, comes back, or, you know, pretty much just like that. Or, you know what, it probably more likely goes like this and like this. So either way, pretty much, I'm sure water's bouncing off of that wall, a little bit, not a lot though. So the water from the sump filter comes out through right here. I also have a circulation pump right here that is pushing out about 300 gallons per hour, and is pushing water out that way. So it also helps keep water moving, which is great because it pushes water out there right here, and then the water is pushed over there, and then over here, and then into the skimmer. So it's great. It's keeping a nice flow to the pond, which helps evenly filter the pond as well. So that's my filtration system for my 600